Good evening and welcome to the Supper Club for the month of March. We are continuing our conversation about different words in the Christian vocabulary that we use, that we take for granted, but that we don't always understand what they mean. So we are beginning March because it's the beginning of Lent. Today, Ash Wednesday. We're talking about sin. The term sin, playing with Marcus Borg's book, Speaking Christian, and talking about how these words have lost their meaning and how we can reclaim them and reframe them. So this is a big one, but it kicks off Lent, and this is good.
For such a short word, it packs a punch.
It packs a punch. We really struggled with this one and trying to come up with how to define it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do this in a little more casual format. We're going to talk and converse.
See where it goes.
And see where
We've got a few questions.
We'll see where it goes. All right. So what are some ways we define sin? What are some ways that what are maybe traditional ways?
Yeah, we actually even found that harder than we thought. I mean, sure, on one level, it's not doing what God wants us to do, right? Breaking the laws or the commandments or being in wrong relationship to God. Or as the Bible, a lot of the word that gets translated as sin often has roots in the Bible with missing the mark. So you've heard us say this before. You've probably heard other pastors. That's because there's some of the language, the biblical language, is as in archery, missing the mark in archery.
Okay. So the arrow misses the target.
Right. So that's great. It's a great metaphor for we're trying to live a certain way and we're not hitting the mark.
Right.
But that just feels so simple compared to the complexity of the human condition, life, the different ways we mess up or not, and trying to figure out, is that sin, and to what degree is that sinful? It gets confusing really quickly.
Right, and Christianity is so laden with this idea, this equation of original sin, right? Our essential nature is bad.
So it's not just messing up, it's something inherent in us now, and now our nature is.
So where does that come from?
So first, Irenaeus, I suppose, in the 2nd century, mentions it, starts to,
Did you just know that?
I did, it just came to me. and wait, it's coming. Augustine, in the 4th century, that just came to me. He really fleshed it out and developed a theology around this idea that out of the
story of Adam and
Eve, eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, disobeyed God, and from that moment on, it entered the world and continues through procreation. It's a physical kind of passing down.
Right, essential human nature is sinful from Adam and Eve, but through Adam. Is the passing along of our nature, our state of sin.
I won't remember that. The quote from Calvin was great. So it becomes this hereditary depravity and corruption of our nature, makes us liable to God's wrath. So it's so bad that really we deserve death at this point.
Right.
And
that's John Calvin.
That's Calvin, and so. And that state that we're in, that's infused in our physical bodies, makes us susceptible to the sins of the flesh that Paul talked about. So they tie it back to the Pauline language, the letters, and the way he talked about
Galatians 5, the works of the flesh.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's how theologically where a lot of this idea of original sin comes from.
Right, but if we think to be sympathetic to the church fathers, theologians, they're just trying to answer. I think they're trying to answer the question of, so why do we do bad things? Why is the world filled with difficult things? Why do we do what we know we shouldn't, and we don't do what we know we should? And so this inherent question of what's going on? What's wrong with us?
There's something wrong. We don't live in Eden anymore. We've been expelled. You can see how the metaphors began to have some power, because we're all looking at a world where we do make mistakes. And so how do we explain this? And forgiveness, sin and forgiveness. The problem is, though, that became the fundamental, the central lens through which we see our whole relationship with God.
We're sinful.
Right.
We need forgiveness.
Right.
We need mercy.
Everything about our relationship starts there. But there's lots of other metaphors to talk about that would help us to think about what's wrong. What's wrong with us, the mistakes we make, things like that.
And that's what's so great about the series that we're doing is we keep offering up, we're not stuck with the dominant metaphor. There are other ways, there are other images that we can use. And one image and metaphor for sin, for me, is separation or estrangement. And Paul Tillich talked about this, that the root sin of humankind is estrangement, that we separate ourselves from God or from one another, or from ourselves, God, or others. And so this separation, and what we don't need forgiveness, we need to be reconciled. We need to be reconnected. And that's helpful to me.
And you see how the language, just using different language, takes it out of the shame space. Right? To feel separated is to, and all of a sudden now you're longing for the reconnection. Other ones are that maybe we're wounded, and we're looking for healing or wholeness. We'll use language like that in prayers and things, you'll feel that.
So rather than being bad, we've been hurt, we've been wounded, and we need healing.
Or another one that comes out of the Exodus story is bondage to freedom. Right? If you've if you've been oppressed in certain ways, made to feel small, lots of examples we can think of in life that have made us in wrong relationship with God, people, or ourselves. And how do we move toward that? It's not forgiveness, right? You wouldn't think of the Exodus story, the slaves coming out of there and say they need to be forgiven.
Right, they need to be liberated.
From there. So I think
I think about people with addictions. You know, that if you are bound up by an addiction, you need to be set free. And Jesus set people free.
Right. So the issue with this is that sin, we know it's there. We know it's, we can all acknowledge that, but if we take it too lightly on one hand, it becomes a problem. If we take it too heavily, too seriously on the other hand, right? So if we take it too lightly, we say, well, we mess up.
We mess up.
And oops, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I try to be a good person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When we were talking about it, what helped me think about it was that what that does is make it, I don't need God in the same way. I can fix this myself. It's almost a humanist perspective. I think that's the danger on the light side.
And on the heavy side, it's if you focus too much on sin, and I grew up in a tradition that really did, it's oppressive. And so you end up still being separated from God because you live in fear of God, and you live separated from yourself or others because it's easy to be judgmental. It's easy to decide what sins are worse than other sins, right? And so these gradations, and then it keeps you separated from God, from self, from others.
Another one on the light side, something about if we deny the depth of what we can do to each other, then these horrible atrocities happen. They can catch us because we don't take seriously the depth of sin. Something in there as well.
Well, people get afraid of or resist confession of sin in worship. We hear that occasionally because people don't want to feel bad. They don't want to feel shame. So there's something in there that we're struggling with about taking responsibility. And
not to get off too far over it, but that reminds me of what we talked about with Montview especially. We're working so hard to be good students, to be good students, to do it right, that to hear the confession, it's hard. We don't want to. It's like I don't want to face that I might not be.
I don't want to feel bad. I don't come to church to feel more.
It's the opposite. It's the gospel is you are a sinner. And it's okay. You're already forgiven. You're in a relationship with God that can't be broken. It's
done.
And we almost then grace becomes if you're trying to win the game, grace becomes almost the enemy. It's too easy. Then all these freeloaders are getting in.
Exactly.
Instead of us who are winning the game. Yes, it's really powerful. Anyway.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing to understand, but the concept is worth it. And why is it worth it? Why do we still have it?
Even the traditional language of sin and forgiveness can be such a powerful thing. If you've done something where you really feel a rupture in a relationship with someone else or yourself, that part of this theology is can be amazingly healing.
Yeah.
It's just not the only one.
Yeah.
So we just need to expand the vocabulary in our understanding, so that if it's about you really need to speak an honest word with someone, have a hard conversation with someone, right? To be in that right relationship, you need courage then. You don't need forgiveness.
Right.
But that's you're sinning by not sharing the the truth of your heart.
Right. So it might not be pride, but it might be playing down or withdrawing, which is something that women talk about, that their sin is not pride, it's usually not stepping up, not stepping out, it's the opposite.
And to tell them being prideful or that you need forgiveness is almost adding some of the same abusiveness that's in the system. So bottom line, it's always about coming back to being in healthy relationships, with ourselves, others, and God. What do you need in that moment to move toward that and away from the thing that's estranging, that's separating you from that.
Right. And so the honesty with being sinful or having sin in us is just that every day is grace and freedom and liberation.
Which is
being set free.
Jesus used so many of those metaphors.
Right.
This was what to set free.
Set free. Right. Reconciled. Yeah. So some questions. We only have 2 for this conversation because it's so rich. One is, what is the definition of sin that you might have learned growing up in whatever tradition you might have been in? And what definition might you use now about sin, if you think about sin?
And the other one's just about the metaphors. What are the other ones? Given you'll probably have certain issues that come up again and again in your life, certain ways that you are either wounded, and so what are the metaphors that work for you? Is it being wounded to healing, estrangement, liberation? What are the words that feel true? And forgiveness can very much be a part of that as well.
Yeah, good. Okay. We hope it's a good conversation. Good night.
See ya.